All right, in a moment, Julie is going to stand up and she's going to read our Deuteronomy text today. And Julie is going to read these words from Deuteronomy. Surely this commandment that I am commanding you today is not too hard, nor is it too far away. This commandment. What is this commandment? That's the question. So, Julie, you're going to be reading from the 30th chapter of Deuteronomy, and Julie and I had a conversation earlier this week where I was explaining that this commandment refers to everything that is covered in the preceding 29 chapters of Deuteronomy. So I said, Julie, could you just come up here and read all 30 chapters of Deuteronomy? You have a nice voice when you ask for prayers. It's beautiful. When you spoke at Jim's funeral, it was wonderful. I thought, come up here, read all 30 chapters of Deuteronomy. Julie said, that's not a very good idea. I don't think people will want to be here. So you have Julie to thank for getting out of here around 11 o'clock this morning. She's just going to read a few verses from the 30th chapter of Deuteronomy. So, the book of Deuteronomy. This is Moses' final address to the people of Israel. You could imagine Moses maybe standing before a mountain, and everyone is gathered there. And Moses is recounting the journey that the people have been on. Their journey through the wilderness, the giving of the 10 Commandments, and then all the smaller teachings about how life with God should be ordered and arranged. So Deuteronomy covers all of this. And it also takes up this question. Is Israel a chosen people? Are they more righteous than others? Are they smarter than others? Are they the sort of people we want to select on a team because they are standout people? Well, God tells us this in Deuteronomy 7:7. It was not because you were more numerous than any other people that the Lord set his heart on you and chose you. For you were the fewest of all peoples. It was because the Lord loved you and kept the oath that he swore to your ancestors that the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. So we Christians tend to think that maybe grace was invented with the coming of Jesus Christ. But this is grace way back in the Old Testament because God loves and cares for these particular people just because, not because they're superheroes. So Moses' teaching throughout Deuteronomy is a distillation of the whole law of God, of how we are supposed to live as God's people. This is also in Deuteronomy. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great God, mighty and awesome, who is not partial and takes no bribe, who executes justice for the orphan and the widow, and who loves the strangers, providing them with food and clothing. So you shall love the stranger. This isn't me talking, and this isn't a stupid yard sign in the year 2022. These are the words of God from thousands of years ago. You shall love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And the rest of Deuteronomy is filled with these warnings or directions for how we're supposed to live. If your neighbor's oxen and sheep go wandering away, well, they're not mine. Someone else can take care of it. Call someone else. Deuteronomy says, no, you may not withhold your help. Deuteronomy also tells us what happens when the spirit of love that God gives us is ignored. Deuteronomy 28, the Lord will set upon you disaster, panic, frustration in everything you do. So, all of Deuteronomy is about these two ways, the way of life and the way of panic, frustration, and death.
You made that sound so good, maybe I will read the whole book. This is Deuteronomy 30, 11 through 20. Surely this commandment that I am commanding you today is not too hard for you, nor is it too far away. It is not in heaven that you should say, who will go up to heaven for us and get it for us, so that we may hear it and observe it? Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will cross to the other side of the sea for us and get it for us, so that we may hear it and observe it? No, the word is very near to you. It is in your mouth and in your heart for you to observe. See, I have set before you today life and prosperity, death and adversity. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I am commanding you today, by loving your Lord your God, walking in his ways, and observing his commandments, decrees, and ordinances, then you shall live and become numerous, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you are entering to possess. But if your heart turns away and you do not hear, but are led astray to bow down to other gods and serve them, I declare to you today that you shall perish. You shall not live long in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life so that you and your descendants may live, loving the Lord your God, obeying him, and holding fast to him. For that means life to you and length of days, so that you may live in the land that the Lord swore to give to your ancestors, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob.
The first time I ever left the United States of America, I was 16 years old. It was a 3-week trip in March and April of my sophomore year of high school. And in the weeks before this trip, I came home from school and studied and studied and studied and read and read and read and wrote essays to try and get ahead for all the weeks of school that I was going to be missing. And then the day came, and I drove to the airport with my parents, and we all got on a plane. We flew 1 hour to O'Hare, and then 7 hours to Amsterdam, and then 7 more hours to Nairobi, Kenya, where my sister Erin and her husband Tim were waiting to meet us. Erin and Tim were teachers at a school in Tanzania. That's another East African country close to Kenya. And we went to a couple countries during that trip, but I don't really remember any of the political boundaries. I just remember the sights and the smells and the people and the congestion. Walking through these cities, it was like nothing I'd ever done before. I think you would have needed to be perfectly sober just to walk around carefully as motorcycles and cars buzzed around you. There was so much to see, so much to see. I remember the first day we landed in Nairobi and we were walking around, I saw all these young men walking around together holding hands. This was 2001. I was a sophomore in high school at Mayer Lutheran High School. I was not sophisticated or worldly or particularly nice, so I tried to gently comment to my brother-in-law, who was much more sophisticated and worldly than me, "Well, Tim, they must be very accepting of homosexuality here." I was not at that point in my life very accepting of homosexuality, but I was trying to pretend. And then Tim told me that this was actually just a common display of friendship in Nairobi. Young men would walk around and hold hands together. And Tim told me that it would be actually far worse to be a gay person in Kenya than to be a gay person in the locker room at Mayer Lutheran High School. So there was a lot to see. It was a different place to be. As I walked and walked and walked through these cities, on every street corner, there were also people sitting in the dirt, limbs missing, fingers missing. And I wondered, were these congenital deformities or bad health care or political persecutions? On many of these same street corners, there were preachers standing on crates with people swarming around them. And this was a different sight too. because I had spent a lot of time with preachers growing up, and no one swarmed around them. At the churches I attended, there were 40 or 50 people, and no one went out of their way to be there. I think we all went out of our way not to be there. The preaching was dull and uninspired. There was none of this eagerness. You could have never drawn in a crowd on a street corner to hear someone preach, at least not where I was growing up. But here in East Africa, the people wanted it. They wanted to hear the word of God. They wanted to hear something. What were they hearing? So I never stopped to listen to one of these preachers for very long because I didn't need to. I would hear a little bit from one preacher, then walk to the next block and hear a little bit from another preacher, and pretty soon I could hear all the sermons merging together to proclaim a unified theme. Life is hard. You are broke. You wish you were not broke. You wish you were rich. Believe in God. You will become rich. It's the prosperity gospel. But this isn't just an East Africa thing. The prosperity gospel is over here too. There are preachers who fill basketball arenas with a version of this gospel. If you believe in God, God will make you rich. If you're rich, it's a sign that God loves you. It's a common theme. It might be an effective preaching way. It could maybe get more people in here. But it's not really the truth. And we know this because we read the Psalms and because the Bible and God's love for us is far more complicated than this. When we read the Psalms, every Sunday at the beginning of worship, if you listen closely, you can hear these warnings about wealth. How wealth might be wicked, or at the very least, meaningless. Do not be afraid when some become rich, when the wealth of their houses increase, for when they die, they will carry nothing away. Their wealth will not go with them. That's Psalm 49, and it's not out of place. The Bible warns us about this, about the fleeting nature of all the things that we hold on to so dearly. It will all fall through our fingertips. Money, wealth, fame, it will all vanish. Now, following God, what does it do for you in the world? I suppose the greatest test case we have for this would be God himself, Jesus Christ, God in the flesh. But from a very secular analysis, I don't think the life of Jesus looks that nice. It was a short life, and he died a most miserable death. So, following God won't make you rich, might not make you happy, might make you dead. But then what about what we just heard from Deuteronomy? It's the total opposite, isn't it? Does it get any plainer than this? If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I am commanding you today, by loving the Lord your God, walking in his ways, observing his commandments, decrees, and ordinances, then you shall live and become numerous, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you are entering to possess. That's what Julie just read. If you follow God and obey his commandments, you will be blessed. But, Julie also read, if your heart turns away, if you do not hear, but are led astray to bow down to other gods and to serve them, I declare today, you will perish. Julie also read that. You will perish. This church was awfully close to perishing a couple years ago. Lindy Purdy, who grew up in this church and loves it as much as any of us, she told me that when she came here to be your interim pastor, she was expecting this place to close down. And this happens. These are the trends. There is a UCC church in Hopkins that is closing in just a couple weeks. These are the trends. Almost every denominational Protestant church is getting smaller and closing, and these are the trends. And we can tell ourselves that these are the trends, these are the trends. We can just keep saying these are the trends, even while we accept leadership that is unacceptable. These are the trends, these are the trends. Even while we turn on one another and do not hold one another accountable. These are the trends, these are the trends. Even when we have forgotten about the love of God. These are the trends. These are the trends. And sometimes that's it. It's true. Sometimes these just are the trends, and a church just has to close. There are some churches, they could have the most beautiful choir, the most inspired preaching, the most faithful churchgoers, but the trends are so great, they will just close. But some land is so prosperous that if blessings do not flow forth, something is wrong. I was here on Friday. Fred and Cal were in school, so I was here with Walter. Lydia was here. Mandy was here. Later in the morning, Walter got an impromptu organ lesson from Lydia. But earlier in the morning, Walter was gardening with Mandy. I think he was helping, I hope. But halfway through, they were getting tired, and Mandy said, why don't we just walk to Kowalski's and get something to eat? So Walter and Mandy walked to Kowalski's. I think Walter made it the whole way. Mandy didn't have to carry him. They bought sweets and muffins. They walked back here. This is our town. Look at this. I imagine a future where it's not just me with a church credit card in a coffee shop meeting people. I imagine a future where there are teenagers, where Walter's a teenager with other teenagers, and leaders in this church meet the young people at coffee shops on a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. to drink sweet caffeinated beverages and eat pastries and talk about life, and then you'll walk up the hill for 3 minutes and worship together, and this will be our life, because this is a land flowing with milk and honey and beer and coffee and fine dining. This is where we are. So, for us, for this church, I think it's pretty simple. If you love God, if you love one another, this church is going to grow. People are going to come. We're going to add more members. We're going to get more money. This is going to happen. But if you don't, this place will perish. And you've seen both sides of this. You've seen both sides of this. But this text today isn't just about a church or the establishment of a national identity. It's about something even deeper than the stupid things we can brag about. Our church added this many members. Now we've gotten this much money. No. That stuff matters, but it's not the end point. It's not the end point. And this text, all of Deuteronomy, is about something bigger than measurements like these. So, our church will do well if we love one another and if we love God. But what about you? You, just individuals who are sitting here. What about your life? How will your life go if you love God? It might not go that well. You might not get a promotion. You might not make that much money. That's what these preachers are wrong about. Your marriage may still disintegrate. Your body may still ache, and you might not get any better. Even if you love God, this might still happen to you. So then what does this text from Deuteronomy tell us today? Well, at the core of this text, at the core of Deuteronomy, is this exhortation to choose life. But to do this, you don't have to go very high to the heavens. You don't have to go very deep to the sea. It's not too hard. It's not too difficult. Oh, but what if it was? Imagine the sort of shape you'd need to be in to climb Everest or to go to the bottom of the sea. Imagine the photographic evidence that this could produce. Imagine what you could tell people when you return from this journey, and they would all want to be like you and learn from you and transform their lives from without. That's not what Deuteronomy is about. No, it is very near to you. You don't have to go high. You don't have to go low. It's in your mouth. It's in your heart. Then, even as your career is floundering, even as your marriage is disintegrating, even as your health is failing, God's love is still upon you. It's not far away. It's not hard. It's not in heaven. It's not beyond the sea. It's right here, in this very church. It's turning to a community of people who will love you and saying, my confidence is sapped. I have no idea where I am going professionally or what my life is for. My heart is broken. I have lost someone I love, and now I am lost. My body aches. I'm sick. I don't know if I'm ever going to get better. And after each admission, God will turn right back to us, look us in the eyes and say, it's not because you are strong or rich or smart that I chose you. I chose you because I love you. Because I love you. So we don't need to go anywhere, high or low. We don't need to be anyone different. God just loves you. It is in your mouth. It is in your heart. The Lord just loves you. Thanks be to God.